For centuries, the children of the gods were famous, and most were classed as heroes of mankind, and with this adoration, the gods were worshipped as well as feared. However, as most things, humans became accustomed to the gods and their games. This eventually led to humanity not fearing the gods or their demigod children. The great deeds of these heroes had long been etched into the throes of history and pushed to the back of the memories of mankind. Gods who had been forgotten as they hadn't interacted with humans for centuries. At least that's what most people think. In truth, gods have still been interacting with humans until this day. Although some in more ways than others, the god who interacted the most was Zeus, the king of the gods. He had a love for humans, well, more for female humans, and over the eons he had brought many children into this world. Of course, none of these women knew that the man that they were falling for was Zeus. Even the children didn't know, unless they developed powers as their godly bloodline awoken. One of the children of Zeus who successfully awokened her godly powers was Kara. For most of her life she was just a plain, ordinary girl who was loved by her mother and never knew her father. It wasn't until she was caught in the chaos of a robbery gone wrong that a power pole was knocked down and the live wires fell in her direction. As they landed on her body, she screamed out in fear. Not to mention, the bystanders around her also screamed in terror. They all thought she'd be electrocuted. But much to her surprise, this massive surge of electricity triggered the bloodline, and much like her father Zeus, Kara inherited the power of lightning. This meant she was unharmed by the raging bolts of electricity, much to the shock of not only her, but everyone else. As her powers awakened, Kara soon found out that she didn't just gain the ability to control lightning. Her hair took on a rather unique ability when she used her powers or when she was strongly willed, and it grew into the form of storm clouds. This helped her to contain criminals she fought against, using the fast area it covers to trap them in her own form of a lightning cage, where bolts of lightning, pillars of lightning, came down from a cloud-like hair, trapping them. She soon took on the heroic lifestyle under the persona of Storm Queen, the goddess of lightning and self-proclaimed daughter of Zeus. She didn't know she was actually the daughter of the god of gods, but since she had lightning powers, she thought the daughter of Zeus had a nice ring to it. Not many knew about her origins, but since becoming a hero and gaining her powers, Kara started to live a more lavish lifestyle. There are many theories around if she is or isn't the child of a god, but that doesn't stop her from striking down criminals without any hesitation. For this one, I wanted to have a pose which showed her lightning powers while looking as if she came towards us. Kind of leaping out of the page in a sense. I decided to give her blue lightning instead of yellow from the original design, just to give some contrast between the yellow colour eyes and the kind of like blondish hair that she's got. I did love the design of this character. The colours went super well together, and the different textures for the lightning, the fur coat and the clothing just added to the whole feel of the illustration. Since her power was lightning, I wanted to have it darker and more cloud-like in the background to give kind of like the whole Storm Queen vibe and atmosphere. And of course, I had to add a lightning bolt to her hand as a weapon, not just to represent her lightning powers, but also as a symbol of her being the daughter of Zeus, the god of gods. Not everyone has a wonderful childhood, and some have more tragic or darker pasts. One who had this type of past was Elizabeth Rosehart. She didn't know her father. She only knew that he had left her mother when she was young, but never knew the reason why. Her mother never told her, and throughout her childhood, Elizabeth had a deep hatred and resentment towards her mother. A mother who wanted to act more girl-like. But without realising it, she took after her father when he was a teenager, although Elizabeth was a bit more rebellious. At the age of 10, she was attacked by a demon. During the attack, the demon scratched her eye, causing her to gain demonic powers. Originally, the powers overwhelmed her, but with time she began to control them. It didn't take much influence for the demonic essence in her body, but she soon started to take on a life of crime. After she learned to control her powers, she went on a rebellious and destructive spree across the city. Her demonic powers allowed Elizabeth to summon a massive hammer, which would appear and disappear according to her wishes. This made her spread fear into those she chased and tormented. That was until one day another power woke inside of her. a power born from the demon essence, and her encounter as a child. Over the years of negative emotions and actions from Elizabeth, she had nurtured the darkness to a point where it was now able to summon demons at will. This power manifested as she held her hand out and screamed at the person she was tormenting. All of a sudden, a dark shadow started to form in her hand with a purplish red glow. As it grew, a pair of yellow and red glowing eyes and a glowing mouth appeared. The darkness started to take on a humanoid demonic shape. As the person screamed in fear, the darkness grew faster and faster. Elizabeth was in shock at the strange demonic shadow creature, moved and responded to her will. She could summon and dismiss it at will just like a hammer. It was shortly after this that Elizabeth embraced her dark side. She decided to become a supervillain, infamous around the world. Her villain name was Red Darkness, and she became the youngest and most wanted villain in her country. I have a bit of a confession to make on this one. I actually redid this artwork a second time, and this is the second version of it. And that's because after I complete the other drawings for today's redraw video, I felt it just didn't hold up well compared to how the others came out. Although I tried to capture the essence of the character, I felt it was lacking something that made it just pop. But I'm super happy that I redrew this character. I found a better reference for the pose that I was trying to do, and I decided to simplify it because originally there was 3 demons in this, as well as Elizabeth and her hammer. But by simplifying it down to just being 1 demon and Elizabeth, I think it kind of worked really well. I decided to have this demon coming out of the artworks. Similar to what I've been doing with my artwork at the moment, is having something as if it's coming out towards you from the page to give a bit more of a cooler perspective and effect to it. I love how the colours pop on this one, and despite the main colour being purple throughout the illustration, the green aura kind of makes Elizabeth, aka Red Darkness, stand out. It's often tricky to get 2 characters to pop in an illustration piece without one of them lacking something. I think this one does pull it off. In case anyone's wondering, I did try a red aura around Elizabeth, but it kind of blended in too much with the purple colours and the background of this piece. So I went with the green colour to make it stand out. It was a very nice addition. It didn't take away from the colours when I combined it with the shadow demon creature, and it just seems to work. Amongst the many wonders and undiscovered mysteries of the world, there is a place unknown to few. Outside of its kingdom, this place is Atlantis, the city sunken under the sea. Thought to be lost to the throes of time, what actually happened was the people of Atlantis had the ability to breathe underwater and survive the depths of the ocean due to their unique physiology. But from time to time, some young members of this hidden city come to the surface and take on roles of heroes or villains depending on their views of the surface world. Of course, some did fall in love on the surface and had children, those who had Atlantean DNA, allowing them to possess most, if not all, of the unique abilities of a full-blooded Atlantean. Often raised on the surface and not always aware of their grand heritage, one of these half-human, half-Atlanteans was Mangrum. Raised in China, he spent a lot of his childhood learning Kung Fu, making him an adept fighter. It wasn't until as a teenager that his unique abilities awakened. This was one of those times where the awakening coincided with a universal event. The Empire of Galactic Order, also known as the EGO, had come to Earth to enslave the superpowered to become mindless soldiers. Despite his best efforts and his powers to control an electrical surge from his body's bioelectrical field, not to mention his enhanced speed and strength, Mangrum was captured by the EGO while he was being chased out of China. The masses of the public became full of fear, and anyone who showed the slightest signs of anything resembling a superpower, well, they were chased out of the country in order to try and stop these aliens from enslaving ordinary people, or worse. Thankfully for Mangrum, he was broken out from an EGO holding camp before he could be brainwashed and mind-controlled, whichever method the EGO was using to make superpowered beings their warriors. After being set free by another person with powers, Mangrum soon learned of a resistant force going by the name the Heroes Guild. This was a guild of people with powers who acted to save those in danger while fighting against the EGO's global threat. Despite the arduous battles and overwhelming odds, Mangrum kept his hopes up, as most of humanity does by going through his struggles with like-minded members of the organisation and the gratitude of those he saved. What can I say about this one? I think it was the first design in a while where there were multiple action poses applied, which not only gave me a feel for the look of the character in an almost 360-degree view, but it was also a persona that was submitted. So this one is Mangrum, the superhero persona of Matthew Mangrum. Matthew's been a regular member in the streams and the videos commenting on that, so it's awesome to see his submission. And seeing how this was a simple but cool design, I wanted to show the character off in a bit of an action pose. I haven't drawn this angle or pose before, in this perspective, but I found a reference I liked, and it all kind of came together with a chef's kiss. To add to the bioelectrical effect of the character, I added lightning around the feet originally and the eyes. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do for the background, but I just copied the lightning on the feet, basically scaled it up, placed it with a bit of alignment, and to be completely honest, it worked. It was one of those lucky moments where it just happened to fall in place. But once the lightning effect fell into place, a simple dark contrasting background, mainly black and greys with a few hints of blue, really made this character pop and stand out, and I'm super excited about how this one turned out. Most people would be afraid of fire and flames, as well as the damage it can do to them. Burns, scars, even worse, severe trauma to the body. That would be the case for most people. In fact, almost all people would feel that way and react that way. But there are a few who have awoken powers, and while most are heroes, some take on a darker path and become supervillains. And one such person was Ignatius Burns. He awoke the power of fire, and when his power activates, his hair becomes glowing red with flames. His eyes glow with the same fierce intensity. Ignatius was able to cover his body from top to toe in flames and control them to such a degree that he wouldn't burn his clothing. Flames, however, were not the only power he awoke. Although not as strong as other strength-based powers, he was able to leap, or rather jump, higher than ordinary people, often leaping 1 or 2 stories in height before using his flames to propel or launch himself in any direction he wants. Over time, and with much practice escaping from superpowered heroes, he learned to use his body's heat to create a kind of smokescreen. This was vital to ensure his getaway. Despite having the power of flames and being able to propel himself through the air, he was unable to use his flames to fly. However, this didn't seem to slow him down. Of course, with his flames and fire powers, there were obvious weaknesses. High amounts of water, especially when soaked, would put out or prevent his flames from working. The other obvious but overlooked flaw to his powers was that without enough oxygen, the flames wouldn't work or weren't strong enough to cause any real damage. Despite this, he decided his love for doing crimes and causing fear in those around him, mainly due to his belief that people respect what they fear, and if they're scared enough and have no hope, they'll obey whatever he said to do. Ignatius Burns started to go by the name Inferno, causing blazing devastation wherever he went. By now you might have noticed a theme with my artwork lately, and it's not only a bit of a new style, taking all things that I've learned in the past 4 years on the channel and some other stuff I've been putting together to make this kind of anime style that we've got at the moment, but also making the character and the poses a bit more dynamic, whether it's changing the perspective or putting them in a frame on the illustration so that it looks like they're jumping out of it or coming towards you. Which leads me on to what I was trying to do with this artwork of Inferno by drawing with Mr. S. First of all, I love the original design of this character and the fact that the hair was on fire as well as one of the arms. I was a bit unsure on how I'd do this. I have tried flames before in this style on Ashana the Godslayer, but they didn't quite come out how I wanted to. They looked pretty, they glowed, but they didn't look like flames. However, on this one, I think I've kind of got them right. The dark effect around the actual flames when you see through them, to the glowing effect from the edge of the flames in, especially on the hair, but more so on the hand that's in the front of this piece. So I wanted to showcase the ability of Inferno, and although he can't fly, he can leap very high, which gave me the perfect idea to use his warmer colours for him, the reds, the oranges and the yellows on his body and his design, to contrast with a lighter blue background like the sky, as if he's just leapt up really high in the air or propelled himself in the air before lunging towards his opponent or his prey. And I think this works rather well, and the contrast between the background and the foreground character really make this artwork pop. Not everyone who becomes a villain has any control over this choice. Sometimes fate can be cruel. Even those with the best intentions can cause horrific catastrophes. And unfortunately, Jeremiah's Scream was subject to a cruel and terrifying fate. Born in 1832 to a wealthy family in Germany, he had the best education growing up. Due to his mother paying little attention to him, Jeremiah focused on his studies, and despite having a stutter and being a skinny kid who was bullied at school, yes, the age-old tale, it doesn't matter what century it is. If you're different, you can and most likely will be bullied. Not to mention his stepfather was also very strict and constantly beat Jeremiah. Despite these hardships and his frail body, his mind was that of a genius, a prodigy who became the top scientist in his field or expertise. He spent his time trying to rid the world of its monsters. They were commonplace outside the safe zones. Sometimes the monsters would get into the cities, but this was extremely rare. Jeremiah believed that the monsters came from another dimension, and over time he developed a device to close off this other dimension from his own, one that would open a portal and then seal it off. Despite his amazing genius and expertise, fate had other intentions for Jeremiah. As soon as he opened the portal and was about to seal the monster dimension, the device began to short out and the portal exploded. The resulting energy from the alternate dimension flooded the room and irradiated Jeremiah. This caused his body to undergo a terrifying transformation. His skinny frame became larger and more muscular. He turned into one of the monsters he was trying to save the world from. The transformation had given him superhuman reflexes and strength, animal-like senses, piercing red eyes. His nose merged into his face and his hands had claws in place of fingers. A glove on his left arm fused to his skin, becoming a part of him. The change also caused his skull to split, showing parts of his brain. He did have most of his intellect intact, but he was unable to communicate or suppress the violent and monstrous tendencies of his new form. Over time, he found he didn't feel hungry, he didn't sleep, and he didn't need oxygen to survive. Now, he has lived for almost 200 years and is hidden in the shadows, using his genius to plan the fall of mankind under the name Dr. Scream. I have to say, I love the story idea of someone who is trying to save mankind from a threat and they became a part of that themselves. And I did like the design of this one. I was also curious to see how monster type design would work in my new style. I do like how this one turned out. The pose I wanted was one of Dr. Scream kind of coming out of the portal, so I decided to make it look like he's stepping out of the frame towards us, and hopefully I conveyed that well enough. I also like the idea of a portal to a different dimension, so what I tried to do was do a fractured space like you get in anime, where part of the background is a different color within where the portal is to the actual rest of it. Not to mention doing kind of like an overlay effect to give a kind of portal edge shape to it, which I think worked rather well. Then, as I said, I made the space inside a contrasting color, but still keeping it darker and to give that feel of kind of like villainous and monstrous or another dimension. The only thing I think that needs working on this one is the facial expression. I realized afterwards that I made it look like he was a bit of a smiley, happy monster. A happy monster coming through a portal towards you is quite terrifying on its own, but maybe a bit of a more monstrous face would have worked better. However, I really love how this piece came out. So here is Dr. Scream. As always, it's extremely difficult to choose which submissions to pick for this community redraw, and I have to say I had a very difficult time, so random selection is what happened. But a special congratulations to those winning submissions, and they are Mr. Green Treks Studios with Storm Queen, Tegan Petrie with Red Darkness, Matthew Mangrum with Mangrum, Drawing with Mr. S with Inferno, and Spencer Deckard with Dr. Scream. I had so much fun working on all these submissions that I can't wait to see what you guys do in the next community redraw. Speaking of which, details are on screen now. Create one of the following: a demon, an elf, a human, a spirit, or an angel. Include the name, abilities, and some lore. Include the name of your favourite folklore creature as well. Deadline is the 18th of October 2024, and I look forward to seeing what you all come up with.